You just won an election. Day 7, the champagne is still on the table. And you got on a plane, not to Paris, not to Washington, straight to the man the West spent 2 years calling a problem. This way, 4 things happened. Different countries, different players, different topics. But I kept reading and thinking, these aren't separate. There is one thread running through all of them, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. A brand new president in West Africa who made a trip nobody predicted. Niger's military leader flying to Istanbul for his first overseas meeting since he took over power. Africa passing a trade roll 4 years in the making. And the IMF ran the growth numbers, and Africa is outpacing Asia for the very first time. I'll connect all 4, but follow me because the connection doesn't arrive until the end. Now, if you have been following this channel, you would know by now that West Africa has been split for 2 years. On one side, ECOWAS. The regional bloc, France and the EU have walked through for decades. Elections, democratic norms, sanctions if you step out the line. And on the other side, the AES, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, 3 countries that had military takeovers, walked out of ECOWAS and said we are done with that arrangement. But the thing people miss is what this actually does. On the ground, Niger, Burkina Faso are landlocked. They have no sea, no port. And that means every liter of fuel, every shipment of medicine has to travel through a coastal country before it reaches them. So these 2 countries, that is Niger and Burkina Faso, needs Benin's port. That's not negotiable. It's geography. So Benin is wedged right in the middle, politically in ECOWAS, but economically dependent on those same Sahel trade routes staying open. So when borders tighten, Benin bleeds too. Late May 2026, Remo Wardani is sworn in as president. Now, before I tell you what he does next, this man is not a general. He doesn't have any political career. He is a finance technocrat. The kind of person who looks at a country and sees it the way a business analyst looks at a company. What systems are broken and what's it costing us? At his inauguration, delegations from Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso are sitting in the audience. That already is very unusual, but okay, maybe it's just diplomatic courtesy. Then 7 days later, he's in Ouagadougou, sitting across Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the man France called a cool leader, the man ECOWAS sanctioned, the man the West hasn't really known what to do with for 2 years. Red carpet, official communique, handshake on camera. Now let's talk about the official communique. I read both of them. Both leaders said security and trade corridors had to move together. Not one, then the other. Both of them have to move together at the same time. Now, these are 2 official communiques from Benin and also from Burkina Faso saying exactly the same thing. And that makes sense when you think about it. You see, the road is the security problem. Jihadists have taken advantage of the fact that the Benin government and the AES governments are not talking together. So they use this corridor to strangle both economies. So you can't really open that trade route without dealing with who is controlling that trade route in your absence. And more to that, there is a pipeline that threads this whole thing together. The Niger-Benin oil pipeline. Billions of dollars of infrastructure running from Niger's oil fields down to Benin's coast. Now, this pipeline was built to transform both economies. Then the relationship between both economies broke and it became the most expensive symbol of a stalled relationship in West Africa. Imagine building a road that connects your city to everything it needs, and on the day it's finished, someone locks the gates. Wardani's visit starts unlocking it. Financial Afrique called it exactly right. Traoré and Wardani are reviving the corridor. Now take note, that statement says reviving, not resuming. Now, I will give the other side its due. Now, some ECOWAS voices are not happy by this move and they're asking very important questions. If you normalize too fast, does that mean every military takeover just needs to wait 3 years and everyone comes back anyway? No, that's a fair question. But the truck driver that hasn't crossed the border for 2 years isn't debating theory. He wants to know when the road opens. You see, that tension between political principle and economic reality, that's exactly where West Africa is sitting right now. Now, speaking about the people who aren't waiting, let's talk about Niger. ECOWAS isn't your friend. Western institutions are nervous about you. Russia stepped in with Wagner, but Russia has its own problems. Where do you go for your first official trip? Overseas? Moscow? Sure. Beijing? Reasonable. Istanbul. June 4th, 2026. General Abdurrahman Tiani, Niger's military leader, lands in Istanbul. Meets Erdogan. The agenda: defense, security, economic cooperation. But here is what that meeting is really all about. When Niger seized the assets of Orano, that is the French nuclear company that was operating in Niger, those assets included stockpiles at Niamey's airport. And that's about 1,000 tons of uranium yellow cake. And that's enough to power France's entire electricity grid for over 4 months, sitting at an airport in a country that just kicked out France. Now, Turkey doesn't just show up and offer help. Turkey has been building towards this. According to Nordic Monitor, Turkish intelligence has already established an operations hub in Niger specifically to expand influence across North and Sub-Saharan Africa and to also secure mineral rights for Turkish companies. Niger also wants something very strategic from Turkey. Turkey has one of the best military drones right now in the market. The Turkish Bayraktar drones have been proven effective in Libya and Ethiopia. They are not cheap like a pickup truck, but affordable compared to conventional air power. So Niger wants that surveillance capacity. You see, Niger is dealing with jihadist groups attacking roads, villages, and even the Niamey airport itself where the uranium sits. So Niger wants that surveillance capacity. Turkey wants the contract and the relationship. Now, I will say this. Some people will see this and think Niger is just swapping one patron for another. But there is a difference having one dominant partner you can't say no to, and having 5 competing for your favor. And competition creates leverage. You see, the Sahel has options it didn't have 5 years ago. Whether those options serve ordinary Nigerians or just the military's leader balance sheet, that's the chapter still being written. But for now, the area citizens still say this is a better arrangement. Now, I want to talk about something nobody gave enough attention to this week. 54 countries, 4 years of arguments, and they finally agreed. At the African Union Summit, Africa agreed on automotive rules of origin under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Now, here is what that means in plain language. If a vehicle has at least 40% of its value created inside Africa, we're talking about labor, parts, materials, that vehicle moves tariff-free across all 54 member countries. Now, think about that from a manufacturer's perspective. Option 1, build in Asia, ship finished cars to Africa, and fight through 54 different import rules in 54 different countries. Option 2, build a car in Africa, hit 40% local content, and you have open access to 1.3 billion people and just one rule book. You see, the argument that took 4 years was real. Some countries wanted the bar to be at 60, maybe 70%. Their point being, at 40%, you can import most of the car from China, bolt it together in Addis Ababa, and call it African. Workers get wages. The engineering, the intellectual property, the real value still leaves the continent. You see, that's not paranoia. That's a pattern recognition from every extractive deal before this one. Now, the other side said, if you set the bar too high, you scare off the factories that will build the supplier base. So they argue that 40% is the floor, not a ceiling, faced with a roadmap to deepen it over time. Now, Africa has been exporting copper, cotton, rubber, bauxite for generations and buying back the finished products at 5 to 10 times the price. So this rule is a deliberate attempt to break that cycle in one sector. If it works, it becomes the template for textiles, electronics, pharmaceuticals. Now, there is one more story this week, and I've been holding it. For 30 years, whenever anyone asked where the world was growing fastest, the answer was always Asia, China, Southeast Asia. Africa was always described with the word potential, which is a kind of way of saying not yet. The IMF ran the 2026 projections. Sub-Saharan Africa 4.6%, Asia 4.1%. Now, before you celebrate, let me tell you what it means and what it doesn't. The WAFI think tank, drawing on African Development Bank data, put it plainly, Africa needs around 7% sustained growth to actually transform economies, to create jobs fast enough for the young people entering the workforce every year. 4.6% is better than 4.1%, but 4.6% is not 7%. So what's driving this high growth? Commodity prices for gold, copper, critical minerals are holding strong. In other words, the global energy transition is basically a procurement order addressed to Africa. Nigeria is stabilizing its currency. Rwanda, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal posting near double-digit growth. And China is slowing demographic transition, debt restructuring. Africa has a population of about 1.4 billion people, and the median age is about 19. So the workforce that is going to build the next generation of global infrastructure, a huge chunk of it is here, right here, not coming. It's already here. The difference between now and Africa rising in 2010 is this: the African Continental Free Trade Area exists. There are also new corridor deals happening, so the manufacturing logic is on paper. If those things stack, the corridors, the rules, the factories, the growth obviously has somewhere to go. It doesn't evaporate the next time commodity prices dip. So here is the threat. Wagdani doesn't call Paris, he calls Ouagadougou, because the system he needs to fix runs through a trade corridor, and the people who control the other end of that corridor are in the Sahel. Now, Tijani doesn't fly to Washington, he flies to Istanbul, because the partner he needs is one that sells capability without imposing conditions, and competes with France and Russia for the same contracts. Africa's trade minister spent 4 years arguing about cars, because at 40% local content, you build a supplier base. You keep the value chain on the continent. And the IMF confirms what the work on the ground was already showing. The continent is growing, not because someone finally helped, but because 1.4 billion people kept building through the noise. You see, the version of Africa the world has been comfortable telling, place you manage, enter, extract from, that version is getting harder to hold together. Whether what comes next is different depends on one thing, and that one thing is whether the people making these deals answer to the people who actually live with the outcomes. That's the only variable that isn't already decided. Now, I have 2 questions before you go. Real ones. Wagdani had 7 days before he had to choose between ECOWAS solidarity and reopening the trade corridor for his own people. And both choices have real consequences. What would you have done? And if you are in the diaspora with this auto rule that is now in place, would you put real money into African manufacturing right now? Or is there something that needs to happen first before you write that check? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll read them. I'll read every comment. See you in my next video. Bye.